The dog disrupts the funeral, suddenly barking at the casket. By 0:03, a man questions why, and the priest at 0:05 grows visibly anxious. At 0:07, the man stumbles upon a shocking truth. It was an overcast day, the sky heavy with grief, mirroring the sorrow of everyone gathered at Hannah's funeral. The atmosphere was silent. Some clutched tissues, while others, eyes brimming with tears, quietly recalled joyful memories of her. The breeze gently rustled the trees as though nature itself mourned her passing. Then at 0:33, the stillness was shattered by an unexpected sound, Duke, Hannah's faithful dog. At 0:37, his barking echoed through the somber crowd. Duke was no ordinary pet. He had been Hannah's constant shadow. Now, lying near the casket, he stared directly at it, barking louder, more urgently. Guests exchanged uneasy glances. "What's he sensing?" they whispered. Anxiety crept in. Some paced nervously, yet no one could look away. Duke's barking wasn't random, it was insistent, almost like a warning. Everyone in the village knew Duke was sharp, his instincts uncanny. More than just loved, he was respected for his remarkable awareness. Even children began to shiver, recalling eerie tales of animals detecting the unseen. What was Duke trying to alert them to? It was clear. He sensed something that rattled even the adults, but fear kept them silent. His eyes locked on a single spot, his actions suggested a threat. Slowly, some adults approached, hoping to calm him. But Duke wouldn't stop. His whole body radiated urgency, making even skeptics waver. Tension thickened. Everyone wanted to know what the dog was trying to reveal. At 2 o'clock, Father Michael, standing nearest the casket, noticed the shift, all eyes on him and the dog. Trying to stay composed, he took a deep breath and urged calm. Yet Duke's barking persisted. With an awkward smile, the priest tried to downplay it, but Duke's piercing gaze demanded attention. The priest cautiously stepped closer, his voice soft. "Easy, Duke. It's okay." But Duke growled lowly, shrinking away, never breaking eye contact with the casket. Sweat beaded on Father Michael's brow. He glanced nervously at the mourners watching his every move. "It's just a dog," he chuckled weakly, trying to resume the ritual. But his discomfort was obvious, as if even he felt something was amiss. Observers noticed the priest wouldn't meet the casket's gaze, as if fearing what he might see. "Does he know something?" an elderly woman murmured to her neighbor. The crowd began to feel an eerie presence, as if something invisible loomed nearby. Children, uneasy, clung tighter to their parents. Father Michael's unease grew. He raised his voice, commanding, "Please, someone take the dog outside." Yet Duke stayed rooted, barking relentlessly at the casket, as if carrying a dire message. And the mystery only deepened. Among the attendees stood a man unfamiliar to most. He seemed out of place, yet perfectly positioned. His name was David, a newcomer to the village who, oddly, had felt a strong connection to Hannah despite barely knowing her. David was curious by nature, with a sharp mind drawn to mysteries. Watching Duke, he immediately sensed that something was deeply wrong. His eyes flicked between the dog and the casket, a grim realization forming. Slowly he rose, straightened his coat, and approached Duke. The crowd held its breath. Who was this man? And what would he do? David crouched beside the dog and whispered gently, "What is it you're trying to tell us, friend?" To everyone's surprise, Duke paused. His barking ceased momentarily, as if considering David's presence. His eyes gleamed with an urgent truth still untold. Duke's eyes held something more than fear. They gleamed with a strange mix of desperation and certainty. David noticed the way the dog's entire body seemed locked on the casket, as if something inside demanded attention. He followed Duke's gaze again, and this time, a strange chill crawled up his back. A pressure, like a silent whisper in the air, nudged him to act. The people around them exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to intervene or observe. One man finally spoke, his tone clipped, "Leave the dog alone." But David remained crouched beside Duke, unmoved. "No," he said calmly. "I believe Duke's trying to warn us." The murmurs spread through the crowd like wildfire, the tension rising as David locked eyes with the casket again. Then he whispered, "And I think we should listen." With that, he gently coaxed the dog again. "Come on, boy, show me." Duke gave the faintest wag of approval, then slowly began to move. Duke sniffed along the ground, his nose twitching as he approached the casket with deliberate steps. It was as if he knew a secret buried beneath the polished wood. The room stirred. Someone whispered about animals having a sixth sense. The talk grew, fueled by old tales, dogs that sensed ghosts, pets that warned of unseen danger. What if Duke wasn't just mourning? What if he saw something no one else could? All eyes turned to the pair as they neared the casket. David stayed close to Duke, reading his every movement like a guide. The atmosphere thickened with unease. Some attendees folded their arms, others clutched their rosaries tighter. Was this grief manifesting oddly, or something supernatural? The whispers turned into speculation. And though no one dared say it aloud, the question hung in the air: what if Hannah's death wasn't what it seemed? Father Michael's discomfort grew obvious. His robes rustled as he stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Please," he said, forcing a smile, "let's keep our focus. We are here to honor Hannah, not to stir confusion." But his voice trembled, betraying his unease. His hands clutched his Bible tighter, and a bead of sweat trickled down his temple. He looked not at the casket, but at David and the dog, as if dreading what might come next. Trying to regain control, Father Michael spoke louder: "This is a solemn moment. Let's not allow fear or fantasy to distract us from our prayers." His voice cracked slightly at the end. Some nodded in agreement. But many others didn't, drawn instead to the strange scene unraveling before them. Why was the priest so anxious? Why did he avoid looking directly at the casket? His urgency, far from soothing, now raised even more suspicion. He pointed at David then, his voice sharp: "What you're doing is disrespectful to the dead." But David didn't flinch. He sensed something behind the priest's sudden outburst. Duke growled again, soft but pointed, his eyes fixed now not just on the casket but on the priest himself. The atmosphere turned heavy, almost unbearable, and even the most skeptical among them began to sense that something wasn't right. Father Michael's pleas turned frantic. "Please," he said, "do not let this moment be tainted. Let us return to prayer." But as he spoke, more eyes studied him than the casket. His words sounded rehearsed, his posture uneasy. The peaceful memory of Hannah began to waver under the growing weight of suspicion. Duke remained planted, unwilling to budge. And David knew, this moment was not the time to back down. Then David, resolute, stood tall. He raised his voice just enough to cut through the murmurs. "Father Michael, may I ask, how did Hannah die?" The church fell into stunned silence. All eyes turned to the priest, whose face blanched visibly. His lips parted, then closed again. The official story had been shared before. Hannah had died peacefully in her sleep. But now that truth seemed thin, even rehearsed. The priest stammered, "She passed away in bed, peacefully. I found her myself." He looked away as he repeated it, again and again, as if trying to convince not only the others, but himself. But David wasn't done. "And why were you the one to find her?" he pressed. "Why was she alone?" The room shifted. People who had once bowed their heads in mourning now lifted them with wide eyes and growing doubt. A wave of murmuring swept through the congregation. Parents hushed their children and older women clutched each other's hands. Some attendees glanced at the casket nervously, while others stared at Father Michael, his collar suddenly seeming too tight. Attention filled the room, not just from grief, but from a terrible suspicion that something was very, very wrong. And Duke's unwavering stare said it all. This funeral wasn't the end of something, it was just the beginning. Father Michael's face flushed a deep red, and a flicker of barely concealed rage spread across his features. He stomped his foot forcefully, making the entire congregation fall silent again. "This is outrageous," he bellowed, his voice nearly trembling with fury. "You are disrupting a sacred ceremony and disrespecting the memory of a beloved soul." His hand pointed stiffly at David, the finger trembling with barely controlled emotion. "Leave this church now, you and that dog," he commanded, voice heavy with authority, though laced with an unmistakable edge of panic. "We will not tolerate another word from you here." David hesitated briefly, his thoughts racing, but Duke gave a sharp, defiant bark, as if urging David not to give up. The bark broke through the tension like a hammer to glass, stirring something inside David. He realized he had struck a nerve. The priest was hiding something he didn't want revealed. Knowing he had little choice at this point, David slowly reached down, grabbed Duke's collar, and with one last piercing glance at the priest, he turned to leave. The murmurs among the crowd intensified. Faces filled with confusion and suspicion watched his every move. Outside, David could feel the weight of the townsfolk's eyes on his back, curiosity burning in their stares. He knew walking away wasn't the end, if anything it was the beginning. Something about Hannah's death didn't sit right, and David's gut told him the truth was buried deeper than anyone dared admit. Beside him, Duke wagged his tail, not in joy but in a knowing way, as if he too felt that their journey was far from over. "Let's go, buddy," David whispered. "I don't think we're done here." With that, they made their way through the cemetery, weaving between crooked trees and time-worn gravestones. The wind picked up, stirring dry leaves and making the trees whisper ancient secrets. The hush was eerie, broken only by Duke's soft panting and the occasional creak of branches. David scanned the surroundings, a gnawing feeling in his chest telling him something hidden was waiting to be found. Duke's nose stayed close to the ground, sniffing with urgent purpose, following some trail only he could sense, like he was being guided by something not entirely of this world. David knew his first step was to dig deeper into Hannah's past, to understand the life she led and the secrets she took with her. Their path led them to her home, a small, weathered stone cottage nestled at the edge of the forest.